Well, hello. I'm down here in Florida. I'm going to give the State of the State address tomorrow, and then we'll be flying back up to Iowa, weather permitting, for the Fox News town hall at 6 o'clock Eastern, 5 Central. Then, of course, the following night, the CNN debate with Donald Trump, of course, not participating, and Nikki Haley and myself participating. So we're looking forward to those two opportunities, and also just continue going and doing our events that we've been doing, where we're really getting in touch with the grassroots. Had a lot of people, particularly since the calendars shifted over to 2024. We've seen a lot of folks come who were undecided and are engaging, as the caucus is now right here on the front burner, and that's been great. And we've been really satisfied with the traction that we're getting there. We feel like we have the great organization and have an opportunity to bring this into fruition. Now, I do think we've seen in the state recently Donald Trump doing events, and I just I watched some of those events, see snippets of his speeches, and comparing him to 2016 Trump versus now. This is just a different guy. He's lost the zip on his fastball. Some of the things he was talking about in terms of magnets underwater, saying that somehow the Perry shooting, people just needed to get over it. We're really head scratching to hear that. He even suggested that that the Civil War, he could have potentially negotiated that somehow. He couldn't even negotiate funding for a border wall when he had a Republican Congress. And so, I see that, and I look, and I think that the more Iowans see kind of, this Trump versus the Trump that they knew, I think that you're going to see more and more people who are going to be open to go in a different direction. I also think with Nikki Haley, her flippant comments and derogatory comments in New Hampshire, saying that Iowans would be corrected by another state, I think are very, very damaging, because I think it plays into this conceit about people in the middle of the country that somehow they don't count, or that they need to be corrected by other folks. So I think that was really bad. I do think that reveals kind of her true view about the folks in Iowa. And now that she's come under scrutiny, I think she's had a lot of problems just conducting herself on a daily basis without sticking her foot in her mouth. And that's not the way you're going to be able to be successful in a general election. The media, even though they've really helped her for many weeks, once they're going to turn, and it's certainly anyone that's the Republican nominee is going to come under withering assault. You've got to be able to handle that. And I think she's shown an inability to do that. And part of it is, she just hasn't been honest with voters. I mean, she was asked, for example, in Iowa, why she said Hillary Clinton had been an inspiration for her running for office. And her response was that she never said that, which is a lie. That is in her book. She talks about Hillary inspiring her to run for office. She even wrote that Hillary in some ways remained an inspiration still. She's on video saying this stuff. So why would you not be honest with Iowans? They have a question about your record, explain it, but don't lie and say that you never said things which are recorded and amply documented. So I think that she's having trouble. I'm looking forward to being able to do the debate, and just to continue to go. Once we get back into Iowa, we will be in town all the way through the caucus, and then we'll be flying out of Iowa that night to go to New Hampshire, and we'll be in New Hampshire all the way through the New Hampshire primary. And I'm going to do at least one televised town hall, hopefully multiple. I've committed to do the WMUR ABC debate, which I think is the Thursday after the Iowa caucus, and we may do another debate or two as well. We'll likely go to South Carolina after that, do a swing, and then perhaps be able to just regroup a little bit in Florida, and then probably head out to Nevada for that caucus. Nikki Haley isn't even competing in the Nevada caucus. And yes, that was done by the Nevada State Party to kind of engineer it for Trump. But, as Republicans, not every election is going to be easy for us. We've got to deal with Democrat states, and to just not compete for delegates, I think, is a mistake. So we're going to be competing for delegates. We'll be on the ground in Nevada, and we'll be working there as well. So, this is going to be a lot of activity within the next month and a half. And I think that, you build up to this point, and you want to be hitting your stride at the right time. And I think we are.
Okay, thank you. We'll start with Tom Barton from Lee. Enterprises. Tom, if you could unmute and ask your question.
Yeah, thank you, Governor, for taking the time. Apologies for the noise in the background at the state capitol here covering the session. I guess, are you worried or concerned at all about kind of the weather predictions and how that might impact turnout on caucus night?
Well, I think for us, we have a lot of committed caucus goers that we've gotten. I mean, tens of thousands that have committed to caucus. I mean, these are the true believers. They're going to show up, and so we feel really good about that. I think that some of the voters that are more in kind of the get out the vote universe, that could have an impact. But I think we fortunately have a core of support of people that we know are going to show up and will show up. And we obviously, are going to be encouraging people to brave the elements, particularly as undecided start to make decisions, because this is just true. There's really not going to be another opportunity, or very rarely do you have an opportunity to have your vote matter this much. I mean, there's a relatively small number of people who are going to vote in the Iowa caucus. Last time there was 186,000. Some say it'll be less this time. We'll see. But your vote does matter, especially if you go and you bring a couple of friends or family members. That adds. That's much different than like voting in a Florida general election. Where we may have in a presidential year 11 or 12 million votes. Your vote matters here, and for those that brave the elements, you absolutely are going to be influential in determining the direction of this country.
Brianne Pfannenstiel from the Des Moines Register.
Hi, good morning. Thanks for taking some questions. We talk a lot about how important ground game is here in Iowa, and as we head into caucus day, do you think your decision to divide some of those functions between your campaign and your super PAC was as successful as you hoped it would be, and would you do it that way again?
Well, I think the ground operation that the PAC has done has been fantastic. I run into Iowans that say, "Oh, a nice young lady came to my door and had a great conversation." So being able to go there, go door to door, provide information directly, I think is going to pay dividends. And obviously we'll see how all that shakes out. But I think that the ground game is great. I think that they've done everything that you would want to do, and I think they're in a position to be able to mobilize the support come caucus night. So I've been pleased with that, and I think the proof will be in the pudding. But I think it was the right thing to do, and I think focusing on ground in Iowa is the right thing to do. They've also done a really good job in New Hampshire and South Carolina. Now, those are more traditional primaries, and so the ground game matters. But I think in terms of a caucus, I just think the premium is doing that, and that's kind of how we viewed it: is the ground game's important, and then the candidate getting on the ground and meeting folks in some of the rural counties. When it comes time for them to make a decision, the guy that showed up is going to have an advantage because they remember and they appreciate that you took the time to show up.
Ethan Humble, KCCI.
Governor DeSantis, thank you for your time today, taking questions. I'm just curious, with the start of the Florida legislative session, how are you balancing that with your campaigning in Iowa just a week ahead of the caucuses?
Well, we've been full bore on doing stuff as governor, really the whole campaign. I'm not out necessarily doing press conferences like I otherwise would do. But if you look at what we've done, the amount of legislation we've signed, the vetoes, the grants that we're awarding, responding to Hurricane Idalia. We did a special session of the Florida legislature in November, passed a number of really key pieces of legislation. So the work goes on. Fortunately, I ran on a lot of bold ideas in 22. We accomplished all of those in the legislative session in 2023. I'll be outlining some priorities tomorrow in my speech. But fortunately for us, we have a great story to tell, where Florida stands vis-a-vis other states, the direction that we've gone, our fiscal situation better than any time in the history of the state. Our ability to bring tax relief and continue doing great things with education and environmental conservation, as well as ensuring safe streets. It's a great story to tell. We're going to tell it. And we're really in tune with both houses of the legislature about keeping the direction going and really solidifying a lot of what we did. But there's no way that you're ever going to be able to match the legislative session that we did in 2023. There was just so much stuff that was done on every issue under the sun. No one's ever seen anything like it. And so fortunately, we achieved what I said I would achieve, but there's always more to do. And so we're going to be advancing some good stuff. So I look forward to doing it. And the end of the day, when the state is going well, when we've had success, a lot of people gravitate towards that and they want to continue going in that direction. So I think you're going to see the legislative output, double down on a lot of the successful policies that we've had.
Dave Price, Great TV.
Hey, good afternoon, Governor.
Hey.
I don't mean this as a smart aleck question, but in light of the weather, and you're the Florida dude, obviously we're to the last week, right? And Trump has such an advantage as essentially a pseudo incumbent. How challenging is it, seriously? Because you've had a very aggressive Iowa schedule where you're all over the place, right? So you're going to, God willing, the weather's going to let you fly back here tomorrow. But how do you gameplay this out when you were trying to maximize your time in front of people and you may have to deal with some pretty crummy weather?
Well, I'll just grin and bear it. I mean, as a Floridian, I was in Sioux Center the other day, and I was walking up to the event, and I was like, what's the temperature? And they're like 26, but there really wasn't any wind. And I'm like, honestly, I can deal with this. This isn't the worst thing in the world. And then we were in Dallas County. I think it was like 28. I'm like, there's really no wind. And then I looked at the forecast, and I saw the -2. That is going to be something that I'll just bring an extra layer for sure. I don't have a lot of layers down here. I normally can just make do, but I'll just blow through it. Now, hopefully, voters, I think, are still, I think they're still motivated to come and meet and hear from the candidates. And so we're going to have a full schedule, do whatever we can do. I mean, obviously, if there's something really significant with the weather, people need to be safe, and we're not going to put anyone in jeopardy. But I think on caucus night, for it to be really, really cold, I think that our supporters are in it. I think that they're very passionate folks, and I think that they're going to turn out. And so we'll be in good shape no matter how the weather happens. But if it is really cold, I think we have the type of supporters who expect that and will brave the elements.
Sharon Wren, KLJB.
Good afternoon, Governor. I hope you have a really good pair of snow boots for when you come back. My question is, residents in Iowa are still in a state of shock because of the shooting in Perry last week. How would you reassure them that in your administration that you would address this issue of violence in schools?
Well, first, as a dad of school-age kids, a first grader, kindergartner, and a preschooler, this is something that my wife and I take very seriously, because you send your kids to school, you should be concerned about what kind of grades they're getting. The idea that there would be problems with physical safety, that should not even come into the conversation. And yet we've seen incidences around the country, and really since Columbine, it's almost been like some people that have a screw loose are really drawn to school specifically, which is not good. But I will say that this was a big tragedy. I think clearly the student, the sixth grader who was killed, that you're not going to be able to ever fill that hole in the family's life or in the community. It leaves a hole. I mean, Donald Trump said, just get over it. That's not the way these things work. We had the Marjory Stoneman Douglas shooting prior to me becoming governor. I came in on the heels of that. Those were really deep wounds in the community that we really worked to heal by bringing accountability for the people that dropped the ball, and by instituting reforms, and so that parents could have confidence that students were safe at school. I do think the response by both the principal and law enforcement seems to have been very positive in terms of saving people's lives. That was not what happened in Marjory Stoneman Douglas. Law enforcement really dropped the ball, and as a result, more students were killed that otherwise could have been saved. So we've done a lot in Florida on school safety. I don't know that that's the federal government imposing that. I think it's state and locals, and then federal probably has some grant support that can help with some of the financing. And then the other issue is students who have really severe mental health problems, we see similar profiles where people are identified as being problematic, and sometimes they just get passed around. I'm not saying that's what happened here. I do think there's mental health issues with this shooter in Perry, but around the country, a lot of times people say, oh yeah, well, we figured this could be something this person would do. You know, you really got to have an ability to understand the behavioral threats and have an intervention, sometimes with mental health, sometimes in an institutional setting, but also sometimes with criminal law. I mean, the shooter in Parkland, Florida, should have been prosecuted for violating a number of laws over many years, and they just kind of passed the buck around, and it got to the point where he committed a massacre of innocent people. And so you can't let that happen. But people can rest assured, you know, as president, with a family of school-age kids myself, that this is something that I understand the importance of, and it's something that I'm personally invested in.
That concludes our press conference. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today.